Why do you want them to listen to your podcast?
So that when they think about starting a business, they've got the content that is pointing them in the right direction.
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
The change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Anyway, welcome back, Craig. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
It was a quick intermission. We come back in. This will be on the second day, actually. But I want to push you a little bit harder on this session. So we've given people an overview of your business. I want to ask you some tricky questions. And the next angle is financial. So we were talking in the previous session about some of the numbers in terms of the types of customers you've got, what the target market is, what you can get away with charging in your area. And obviously there's variables, right? We might have said $70 to $90 is where your market's at. But if you've got a particularly big block or a difficult block or a customer that's really annoying, do you just go, all right, instead of $90, I'm capping out at 120 on this customer? Or
Yeah, I've got some bigger blocks. Waterfronts down at Cronulla, for example. I have one that pays $150.
Yep.
So yeah, there are people that pay that, but they've got to have the block size and the budget to do it. And that's for living on a waterfront, they can do that.
So yeah, I think the first reason you will lose is because you've gone over their cap. They're starting to go, I'm not comfortable with spending that much money on my gardens or lawns on a regular basis. And then you'll have a bunch of other reasons why you might lose on a price as to whether they think you're too expensive or anything along those lines. But that's where I want to circle back around. Are you too expensive? Now, if you've been in business for 20 years and you've done a couple of other businesses, surely you would be a good person to get advice from when it comes to how to price things and how to know whether your business is profitable.
Yes, well, there's always the last guy, which we hear about, and they people still bring that up, and
Yep.
that's fine. But I try not to. I try not to sell too much on price. I guess I would sell or market on quality, longevity. That I've got the staff to help, regularity, reliability, that sort of thing. I sort of try and pick up on what the people tell me. One lady said, I've had trouble keeping a lawnmower man. Can you come regularly? I said, yeah, no problem. I've been doing it for nearly 40 years part-time and 20 years full-time. What else can I do? So, if you start selling on price only or marketing on price only, it's the worst thing you can do, really.
Yeah, so typically when I hear somebody say the last guy, immediately what my red flags are hearing is the customer painful or was the last guy unreliable? And if they were unreliable, then their price is not really your comparison.
Well, that's right. It's chalk and cheese. I guess probably what they're saying is the last guy was $60. That's my mental budget. Can I get around my head to pay $80? So, they've just got to think about how they were let down by the last guy. Where is he? Is he still there? He might still be around, but they might not have been happy with the quality. So I guess they've just got to get that last guy price out of their head, basically.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess the other aspect of this is in terms of your business being profitable with these sorts of prices. And what I hear is you're not in an area where all of your customers are premium customers. You're not selling them on the highest end. You're selling them on what's affordable to them. So do you sit there and go through that in your head and go, all right, how long does it take me to do a job? How long does it take me to get from one job to the next? Is this a daily amount that I can pack into the bank account and go, all right, by the time I pay staff, pay my expenses, I'm making a profit?
Yeah, well, that all comes into it. And I guess there's a certain amount of lawns that we've got to do with staff, or if I'm out on my own some days, I would do less lawns. But, I try and, I take all that into account. But I've really condensed my run over the last year or so. So just doing the Southern Shire. So I find we can do that, 15 18 lawns a day if we really push it. That's the two
Yeah.
or three of us. But if I'm on my own, I probably do 7 or 8, so it's a bit of a rest day.
Yeah, okay. So I guess one of the markers that I refer to when I'm talking to people like this is in terms of how much you do per day per staff member. And employees typically are not going to work as hard as you do, but unless you're giving your hip a rest and your knee a rest. But overall, I look at it and I go, people need to be doing more than $500 a day per person. If you're solo, $500 a day is sort of your benchmark of the minimum you can get away with at this point in time where you're making money. And a lot of people are doing between $600 and $1,000 a day. And I would say with your sort of run, those are probably the numbers that are relevant.
Yes. So I did a day, what was it, 2 days ago? Yesterday on my own, I did 690, I think. So
Yeah, smack on then.
That's sort of what I try and do on my own. Just depends how I'm feeling, I guess, but
yeah,
how tired I am. But with the three of us, I'd like to be around that 1,500 mark at least.
Yep, fair enough.
By the time I pay, everything off their costs, insurances, super, tax, all that sort of stuff. You know what it's like.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And you're pretty comfortable with those sort of numbers that your business is turning a profit. That's one of the hardest things is to go, okay, by the time I pay my staff and expenses, I might as well not have staff because they didn't make me money.
Well, that's right. Me having staff is twofold. One, of course, to make money, but the second is to sort of rest my body a bit because I'm not getting any younger.
So from that point of view, you can literally go, okay, I can reduce the amount of effort I put in on the day. So I'm really working on numbers of 2 people working for the day and 1 person assisting.
Pretty much, yeah. Like I might have the 2 of them on the mowers, or 1 on the mower, 1 gardening, and I'll be doing the whippersnipper and the blowing. So yeah, mine's the less strenuous side of it.
Yeah. So in essence, you're saying we're going to have 3 people working, but I get to choose the jobs that suit me.
True. That's right. And like I mentioned before, we might have the 2 of them at a strata site doing the groundwork. I might leave them there with the trailer and the gear, and I'll go down the road and do a couple of lawns myself. So at the same time.
And that allows you to make sure they are profitable while you have a relaxing go at the jobs you want to do rather than working yourself to the bone.
Yeah, and they're pretty good, these 2. I trust them. I've had them. I went out with them one-on-one for a while, a few months each, just to sort of get them familiar with my way of doing it. As you mentioned before, whip, blow, mow, blow, which is what I like to do.
Yep.
Not blow it all back on if I can, but blow a little bit back on.
Now, I'm just going to dig in on this. Whip, blow, mow, blow means you're a catcher, not a mulcher.
We do both. It just depends on the grass type, how many jobs we've got on, that sort of thing.
Yep, fair enough.
A lot of it here is buffalo grass, so it mows pretty well if we're doing regular.
Yep.
I think where it doesn't mulch well, a lot of blokes are against mulching is because they're letting lawns go 3 or 4 weekly.
Yes.
And sometimes
the other thing I've noticed there, if you go to Queensland, then you can't get away with mulching as easily because 90%, I'm just making up numbers here, 90% is blue cooch.
Yeah, cooch doesn't mulch. Well, I've got a couple of cooch lawns and I'll catch those.
I'm going to say you can mulch cooch, but typically you can't. It looks terrible. It's one of those lawns, if you're doing fortnightly cuts instead of mowing every day, it's taking enough cooch off that it sits on top. It goes all fluffy. It doesn't blow away. It just hangs around and looks ugly.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So you catch it, put it in the bag, chuck it in their bin or take it away, and their lawn looks awesome. Yeah. But if you put a robot on that lawn and you mow it every day, then it's not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I haven't gone to robots yet, but we've got green bins here in most of our places, so we use them. But if we can't get it in their green bins, I'll charge them $7.50 per bag, or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Take away.
So you allow for doing a green waste run to the tip every now and then to dispose of grass,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing means you've got room in your trailer for packing green waste.
I do. And I have a second trailer that sits on the property that gets filled up with bags, and then when it's full, I'll take that to the trailer. I just went there this morning, actually.
Yeah, okay. Do you find that if you don't do it frequently, the grass clippings would start creating a rust problem on the trailer?
Yes, I've gone through a few trailers over the last few years because of that.
Keeping it in bags would minimise it, I guess.
Yeah, it's certain bags, yes. Yeah.
So what size bags are you using when you do that?
There you go, the 1 metre high, those white bags from Drew, I think it is, and they seem okay.
Yep, awesome.
But sometimes I'll pull them out of the trailer and leave them in front of the property, which doesn't look great either, in front of my property, that is. The neighbours comment on it.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I try and go to the tip probably weekly, I suppose.
Yeah, fair.
It's not far from me. It's up at Lucas Heights, which is only a couple of suburbs away.
Up with the nuclear reactor?
That's it, right across from there.
They could turn grass clippings into radioactive waste.
Yeah, they glow in the night there.
Perfect. So, bit of a tricky question for you. With lawn care businesses, if you're running efficiently, and I'm going to guess that you know what you're doing, you're not bankrupt, you're sort of somewhere between 10% and 30% profit margin by the time you take out wages and other expenses. So and I'm guessing you're going to be in that range. I don't need you to give a real big clarification on that one, but if we switch over to what you were doing 20 years ago in the coffee shop, different overheads, what does it look like by comparison?
Yeah, very different. The first coffee shop we had was year 2000.
Okay.
And we were cash only then. There wasn't any FPOS machines from memory. And
that takes you back.
Yes. And if you know what I mean there. But the second coffee shop was 2006. It was FPOS, and the expenses were a lot higher. I reckon we were probably lucky to make 10, 20% profit,
In the coffee shop, yeah. So you've got to turn over a lot of coffee because you've got to pay for rent and staff.
Yes.
And then all the other expenses that go along with it. But rent and staff would be the big expenses.
They were, yeah. The rent was pretty high, and we had 3 waitresses, and yes, just never ending. But we did coffee and food, so you had to turn over a lot. There were high income, high expenses, basically.
Yeah, okay. And coffee shop in your area, I'm just trying to get a picture of that. In the ritzy suburbs, if you go North Shore in Sydney or Bondi Beach or somewhere like that, you could probably get away with charging a bit of a premium for your coffee and your food. You probably got more people coming through.
Yes.
Was your coffee shop targeting people who were well-to-do and happy to spend a bit of money, or is it getting that middle class?
Yeah, we were only charging $2.50, $3 a coffee then, but that's just the sign of the times. Now it's $5 a coffee, I guess, at a coffee shop. But yeah, we were in the second coffee shop we had was at Kyle Bay, which is sort of Hurstville, South Hurstville, down in the water. It was a pretty ritzy area, I guess, for here.
Yeah, for sure.
And
so yes, you charge $3.30 for a coffee instead of $2.50.
Yeah, we probably should have, but that closed up and divorced after.
Yeah, so around 10 to 20% margin on the coffee shop. So it's actually not too dissimilar in terms of your profit margin with a lawn mowing business, because I think a lawn mowing business should be aiming for that higher margin depending on how you run your business, but 30% is quite achievable for a small lawn care business. If you go solo, where you actually account for yourself having a wage, then 30% should be achievable. If you've got a couple of staff, then 15 to 30% is probably normal.
Yeah. I'd like to think it's around the 30 to 40, but we'll see after the first full year with this stuff.
Oh yeah, that really is a testing ground, isn't it?
Yeah. This will be the first. When did they all start? one guy started late last year, so nearly a year, and the other guy started earlier this year, so not quite
Yeah.
a full year yet.
Yeah, okay. So another thing, and you've already mentioned numbers. People could do the maths in their heads. It's not a trick question, but it is adding to that value. You mentioned that on your own you could do, I think you mentioned a day that you did 680-ish. And you're saying with yourself and 2 staff on, you aim for about 1,500 in a day. What I'm getting at there, a solo guy working off numbers like yours would go, okay, if I can aim for between $500 and $800 in a day, I'm probably going to do somewhere around $120,000 to $160,000 a year.
Yep, sounds about
I think
right.
that's fair.
Yep.
When you go from solo and say you aimed for $140,000 in the year, just gives you a bit of buffer room to have some errors and some wins on your own. 3 people should be, what is it? 140, 280, 420.
Yeah, if you did that every day, yeah.
What I find time and time again is people won't get those numbers as you put on staff, and you've already reiterated this. It doesn't quite work out the same. So typically speaking, by the time you got 3 people working, you're not likely to triple the income. You're probably more likely to be around that $300,000 rather than the 420, or you might get 330, 350 a year. Is that sounding like you're nodding? So we're in the right direction in terms of going, yeah, the more staff you put on, the narrower your margins get.
Yes, well, my staff aren't full-time. They're not both 5 days a week, so I guess that's the
Okay.
thing. But, yeah, for example, last week I think it was about a $5,000 week. So if we did that, every week, we're looking at $250, but that's not them being full-time. So I guess
Fair enough.
full-time.
And that's a valuable factor. Being
Yeah.
part-time, that does, it reduces those numbers proportionately.
Yeah, true, yeah. I do have another guy, a contractor, that contracts to me now and then, but we do a lot of the big real estate cleanups as well, getting places ready for sale. Also, we've got one tomorrow. The tenants have abandoned the place, so we've got to clean it up. The pool's black. It's full of trees and plants, so we've got to pull them out of the pool. So we do a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah, there's interesting stories when tenants abandon a place, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I hope there's enough bond to pay for it. That's all I'm worried about.
Good luck with that. I like to squeeze the real estate through everything when it comes to that. I'm not willing to put all of the effort in without knowing the money's good.
Yeah. Well, I did ask that. I said, look, if there's no bond, are you or the owner going to pay for it? They said, yeah, the owner will pay for it. So
I had one where the tenant was, I'm not trying to be nasty, but the tenant was actually a really bad tenant. So when they managed to get rid of the tenant, they asked me to quote on cleaning the property up. I walked onto the property, just about died because the smell inside near the fridge smelt like death. And then I spent about half an hour taking fleas off my legs before I was willing to get back in my car. I called the real estate agent while I was removing fleas and said, I'm not doing the job.
Yep. Yeah, well, I'll be looking at fleas tomorrow, I think.
I said to them, get a pest control person to deal with the fleas and then get a quote, and don't get it from me.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. At least you were straight with them.
Yeah. But another one I did, it was a deceased and mortgagee repossession.
Yeah. All right.
So the person who asked me to quote the job was the lawyer for the family of the deceased. And they were given the authority to manage it, even though it was a mortgagee's repossession.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, when I quoted them for the cleanup, it was like you're talking about a swimming pool that was full of trees and branches and bits and pieces. And, everything in the yard was overgrown by a long way.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really sad for a family when you've got somebody pass away and the property's reached that stage where you're like, oh, well, the bank's going to take the property and you got to do what you can to try and make sure you get out of it without debt or hopefully recover something.
Yeah, and also get it presentable to go on the market. Yeah.
Yeah, and the lawyer that I was dealing with, they were very willing to make sure I got paid. And this is years ago. I think it was a $5,000 job. It was just that big. It was like, I'm going to be spending a week there. You're going to pay me for it.
Yeah. Well, this one tomorrow, I think it's about a $2,000 job, but hopefully we'll be out of there tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're big jobs, and if you price them right, they're worth doing.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been asking about which brand of battery tool to buy, and I don't like to recommend one brand of battery for everyone or every situation. Dealer support and access to parts and service all play a big role in that decision. Some brands have better tools for specific needs or each product category. I've been using a variety of brands, and I endeavour to provide unbiased interviews on Aussie Lawn Stars with as many of those product brands as possible. I reached out to Ego Power Plus through the podcast because of how Barry supports the industry and Ego owners. Barry has impressed me with his loyalty to customers in providing support and listening to the needs of the industry, which has resulted in a full lineup of new commercial tools landing in Australia over the last 12 months that has positioned Ego as a leader in the commercial tool space for outdoor power equipment. Visit egopowerplus.com.au to see if they have the tools you need today. The profit first model, it goes back to a book written by Mike McAllowitz where he talks about making sure you pay yourself a profit before you pay anything else. The main point there is to actually have separate envelopes that you put money into in the old system. You know, when you're doing your coffee shop and you're taking cash only, you put some money in that envelope to pay your staff, and you put some in this envelope to pay the taxman, and now you do it in a bank account or multiple bank accounts. So yeah, in terms of how you run your business, with your experience in the coffee shops, you're probably good at doing that, I'm guessing.
Yes, well, I have multiple bank accounts, and yes, I just transfer money from one to the other to make sure there's enough. You know, I've got a super bank account for the boys' super, tax as well, just to keep that separate so I don't touch it, basically.
Yeah, so those are two that ring true for me as well. One for superannuation, one for the taxes for the whole business. I don't separate into different bank accounts for different taxes because there are so many. Just everything that's tax related goes into one account for me.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
and then I've got another account to save up for new equipment. So every dollar that comes in, I put 10 cents into the new equipment fund.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
So do you have any other accounts you work on with that?
I haven't got one for equipment, but I probably should. Although I've been buying a lot of equipment this last year because of the staff members coming on.
That's an interesting
hopefully I'll be right for equipment. Servicing, of course, but new equipment, hopefully I won't be buying anything for about 6 months.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you grow your business, is it better to borrow to buy the equipment to grow the business, or do you put the money aside beforehand? And as I just said, I put money aside to replace equipment, but it's not necessarily enough to make a massive growth. If you need to go and spend $40,000 on equipment to actually add business, you probably can't factor that in easily based on your past profits.
Sure, if you're spending that much. Well, when I bought my stander, that was $15,000, I think. I did borrow for that. But this last ride-on I bought one of those little Rover 30-inch things just for one particular property.
Yeah.
I just paid cash for that. But
buying
a mower, I sort of do borrow, I guess. I buy them on Afterpay. So I pay that over 8 weeks, I guess it is.
Yeah.
I just find that's easier with the way customers pay me. It's better for the cash flow. So if I'm not paying cash for something, I'll buy it on Afterpay or PayPal, Pay by 4.
Yeah, and cash flow is a really important number to talk about when we're talking about business and how to make sure you're actually doing business and not just being a solo individual playing with money.
Yeah.
Because I had a chat, not with my actual accountant, but with a friend who has a lot of accounting background who also was running his own business, and I said, look, I'm trying to make sure I'm doing the right thing. Have a look at where I'm up to. What do you recommend I change at this point in time? And the one thing he talked about was evening out cash flow. So in other words, like you're saying, instead of spending $20,000, $15,000 on a brand new mower, let the bank spend the money and you pay it back at a weekly rate, or however, like if you split into 4 payments, whatever it is. If you borrow for it, and often with the borrowing terms you're talking about, it's a zero interest borrow.
Yes, that's right.
You might pay a little bit of a premium to buy the equipment on the zero interest borrow, but it's not a massive margin.
That's right. If you pay it off in that 8-week period, whatever it is, there's no interest. But of course, when I bought the Stander, yes, you're borrowing for that. So there's interest in that. But if I'm buying something for $2,000 or $3,000, like a push mower, I wouldn't borrow for that.
Yeah. So for people who don't understand cash flow, what it means, if you borrow money to buy equipment or to grow your business, then when you look at the money that comes in, so say you got to buy $40,000 worth of equipment to take on a bunch of customers or a big customer, and you put on an employee to do that customer, you go, okay, if that customer is going to bring in $120,000 a year, and I've got to pay an employee $65,000 a year, and I've got to buy $40,000 worth of equipment, then I'm not making any money in the first year because of all those expenses. Whereas you cash flow it so that you can't get it out of paying wages, but you can mitigate that $40,000 worth of equipment over a year or 3 years or 5 years, so that your new job that you take on is cash flow positive.
Yes.
Instead of negative, which means you're absorbing some of those costs by making sure that you still have money coming in each week to be able to live on, instead of going, I'm taking on this new job and I'm going backwards.
Of course, and they're tax deductible expenses as well.
Yeah,
of course. But yeah, cash flow is important. I guess that's the issue with me when I take on these when I say bigger jobs, $2,000 jobs, I got to make sure that gets paid, because you can have, before you know it, you can have 10, 20,000 owing to you. So that's an issue.
Yes, and I hear a lot of people these days when they're doing residential jobs, they say pay on completion. I think that's still a new idea in Australia, though, but there's a lot of people that are starting to do it. And 7 days has often been the claimed terms that you offer a customer. You pay, I mow your lawn, I want to have money in the bank within 7 days, or you pay cash when it's completed. But I know, even listening to Ben and BJ today, they were talking about the more they had owing to them, the more they felt like they were doing well. So if they had $5,000 owed to them, it was just average. If they had $20,000 owed to them, it was like it had a sense of pride in it, going, "Oh, there's $20,000 that's coming my way."
Yeah, well, yeah, you got to look at that. I look at my owings daily, and I've got about a bit over 5,000 owing now. Yeah. I'm not too worried, but because there's probably 60 customers there, and that 1,000 could come in tomorrow.
Yep.
But yeah, these bigger jobs can be a concern.
Well, typically, and that's why I brought it up, you have a larger commercial customer, and often commercial customers will set payment terms when you quote them and say, we can't pay any earlier than 30 days.
Yeah, I don't have any of those. I used to write, back on what you mentioned before, I used to write payment due in 7 days. Yeah. But now I just take that off the invoice.
Yeah.
So I don't say payments due on completion, but they assume that now when they get the invoice. I guess if they haven't paid within 14 days, that's when I start looking at restricting the next service. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably other than burning their lawn with Roundup or dumping clippings on their driveway, the acceptable way of pursuing debt is, I'm going to cease services until you've paid.
Yeah.
And typically that gives the customer a little bit of a squeeze and going, well, your lawn's going to look pretty terrible if you don't get this paid quickly. Some customers, it's just like, oh, well, I don't care. I'll get somebody else to mow it. See you later.
Yeah. Well, if they have that thought, and I've had that before, well, then it's probably best we part ways anyway. But yeah, I say to them, look, if you haven't paid, I'll have to restrict your service. And then when I get back there, if the lawn is longer, I'll have to charge you extra. So, that's fair enough, I think, in this day and age.
Yeah, So I do think that's fair. I actually lean a little bit differently to you on this in terms of going that putting the terms in front of the customer up front is a good way to have clear expectations. So whether it's pay on completion or 7 days, or whether you're agreeing to their 30 days payment terms, whatever it is, the other one that I think is really important to think about, if you know you're likely to come across customers where debt collection might be an issue, throwing in your terms the late payment fees. So that way, if you've stated it, then you can do it. If you haven't stated it, then you've got no rights, no leg to stand on if it ever goes anywhere.
True. Yes, I did bring late payment fees into it a couple of years ago when I had my other run over in St George area, but for some reason I just don't do that anymore. I just find, like, if you talk about it up front to the person at time of quote, when it's due, I find that the best way. And
and
a reminder.
The reality is having those clauses in there on your invoice or on your quote, it's good to have the expectations up front, but it's only likely to be needed with one customer in 5 years or one customer in 10 years. If you are professional and you've got your senses about you, so you're not taking on really bad customers, then it's not very often where that actually will come up.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I've probably had 3 in 20 years. I've probably had 3 or 5 that I can think of where they've just not paid me. And you knock on the door, no answer, and then a week later they're gone. So yeah, a handful, which is not here nor there. But I've had quite a few. I've threatened with, debt collecting. I threatened Strata recently with debt collecting.
Yeah,
they paid it, the next day, and I did lose that job, but okay, that's probably the best thing,
Yeah, if it gets to the point where you got to threaten them with debt collecting, then they're probably not a great customer.
No, that's right. And I'd heard stories about them, and it proved to be true. So probably better just to move on and go and get someone else.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.